Hey everybody, it's Terry. I'm here with my dear friend Janelle and fellow adventurer, and we're continuing a call that we did a couple of weeks ago on wildly improbable or wildly interesting, inspiring goals. And we got to talking about stuff, so we decided to continue. So we're here in my backyard. I call these my backyard chats. And we're talking about various different subjects in line of enlightenment. So where we left off before we hit the record was we were talking about people getting freaked out about cosmic kind of experiences. And Janelle just told me that she doesn't like to say freaked out. She rather gets delighted.
Yes.
Delighted. So tell me a little bit about being delighted, Janelle.
Well, to me, freaked out implies like something's out of the ordinary or something's abnormal. And I think that when we have these experiences of profound connection with the universe, and especially when the universe shows us how we're all interconnected, that's not out of the ordinary. That's exactly the ordinary.
Yeah.
And in our moments of disconnect, that's really the out of the ordinary. That's, when we feel numb or anxious or, less than interested. If we're not enchanted, that's out of the ordinary. That's what we should be freaking out about, not when we get an urge to text a friend and find out that they're making the exact same thing for supper. That's ordinary.
That one blew my mind. It didn't blow my mind. It didn't freak me out. It delighted me to hear you say this, because you were talking about this and I was like waiting for the punchline on this, what happened. But yeah, you're making the same thing. So that's awesome because you're both on the same, tuning into the same vibration.
Right. So the quick recap of the story is, just so everybody is filled in on it, is last weekend I got the urge to make chili for supper. And so I went to the store, got the stuff, making the chili. And as I'm making the chili, I started thinking about my friend Mary in Florida and just really feeling her. And I thought, I'm going to reach out and text her. So I texted her and I'm like, hi, what you doing? I'm thinking about you. What's going on? And she texted back and said, I'm making chili. That's what I'm doing. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
How cool is that?
And my hunch is Mary probably wasn't at all surprised to hear from you, because most likely she was thinking about you too.
Right. I'm going to guess that she was. And I think the thing is that, when we talked a couple weeks ago on the call, we talked about practicing that feeling and getting used to that feeling and being in that state to such an extent that you learn to trust it and you learn to recognize it, and it gets easier and easier to stay there. And I think that the reason, we were probably both thinking about each other, and I texted her versus her texting me, because I'm very practiced at being in that state. I'm like, not to toot my own horn or something like that, but I deliberately conjure that state and write it for as long as I can. So when I get an urge like that, I'm very likely to trust it. And it's quite possible that Mary was picking up her phone even as I texted to text me.
Right.
I don't know. I can't speak to that. I'm not there. But I think it works not just for connecting with our friends over chili, but I think it works in all areas, what we want to do next with our life, or how we want to share and express our connection. All of those things are available.
Yeah. Well, I say that's a really good point, because it's not just for trivial things like chili. I mean, chili could be a trivial thing, or it could be a deep spiritual thing. but it tells you that you're on the right track. And once you know what that feels like to be on that track, it can be something absolutely amazing, like a trip to Patagonia or something like that, that you're really,
Right.
really wanting, or your life's dream, your life's career, whatever the case is, something really major. If we're at that point where we're delighted when these things happen and we don't get freaked out and block it from happening again, oh my God, I can't handle this,
Mm-hmm.
to that type of reaction, I don't know if it scares it away or not, but if we're delighted and we're glad that it happened, then it will also pave the way for more things like that to happen on a more important or grandiose kind of situation.
Right. And if we've learned to trust our intuitive impulses on little things like finding a parking place or connecting with a friend over chili, and when I texted her, I didn't know what that was about. I did not expect to find her making the same thing. I just knew she was on my mind, and I know this feeling enough to know to ping it and see what rises up. And so that's what I did. And when we learn to trust in those little things, then when the universe gives us a bigger nudge, like, hey, it's time to move to Florida or something, it's a lot easier to go with that when you're like, well, okay, I've got some experience with that and I've got some trust with that,
Yeah.
And I was thinking about that, and of course, as you know, I love play, and I love the topic of play, and I love this as an idea. And I was thinking about that this morning as I was thinking about us coming together on this call. And I think that when we're in that playful state, that's one of the benefits of that playful state, is it gives us practice in that open form of consciousness.
Yeah. So do you have a way when that feeling is that you're on track? Is it just that you know, or is there a specific sensation that you get when you know?
Well, I feel good. I wake up eager for the day. Sometimes I have trouble sleeping at night, but it's not because I'm worried about things. It's because I'm like, I can't wait to be awake.
Yeah.
I can't wait to go play.
Yeah, it's such an amazing world. You want to spend more of it. And your sleeping state, I'm sure, is equally as awesome as your waking state.
Yeah, so that's a sign for me. I know when I'm not in it, when I start dropping stuff, or I feel frustrated, or I'm cranky, all those kinds of things. But then as soon as I notice it, I give myself a break, because in the noticing of it, I'm back into connection.
Yes.
So what does that mean? For example, yesterday, a friend, we were supposed to meet for lunch. And so she texted me early in the morning, and she's like, it's not going to work. It's really raining where I am. I don't want to make the drive in the rain. Let's reschedule for Wednesday. And I'm like, okay, of course I want you to be safe. But truthfully, inside, I'm like, I'm throwing a toddler fit. My day has changed.
Yeah.
And of course I want my friend to be safe. Of course. But then when I notice that toddler fit, then I'm like, oh, so that's the ego. That's my, it must happen how I plan it to happen, or it's not, you can't change the plan on me, da-da-da. And so instead of beating up on myself for having the toddler fit, I can celebrate that I'm in the watcher who notices the toddler.
Yeah.
and
Right,
go, well,
because the
okay, great,
toddler's going to act out. And just like I like your example of the toddler, because just like a toddler, when it's throwing its temper tantrum, if you ignore that temper tantrum, now I've never had a 2-year-old of my own, but the theory is that if you ignore that 2-year-old long enough while he's throwing his temper tantrum and he doesn't get the reaction he wants, he's eventually going to stop. Now, the
Yes.
lucky thing is when we have those reactions in ourselves, and I've heard this, I've tested it a little bit, but I've heard coaches that will also say that this emotion will run through its course anywhere from 90 to 120 seconds if you ignore it or observe it and just let it be. So if you suddenly get this surge of anger and you're going, God, I don't want to be angry, and then you're angry at yourself for being angry, that'll amplify it most likely. So if you observe your little toddler throwing its fit and say, wonder what it's doing. And it just popped into this memory of me that I had from about 15 years back. But I was sitting at lunch at the food court, and there was this 2-year-old throwing a fit. And my coworker, Debbie, comes by, and I see her from way across the food court. She's walking up, and she sees this toddler, and she comes walking up to it, and it's spinning around on the floor. Mom is trying very hard to ignore it. And she comes up and she goes, "Hi, what's up?" And she's looking upside down at the kid. And the kid is like, "What? Who the hell is this lady?" And I mean, literally, she's got her face like 3 feet away from this kid's face and looking, "Hi, what's going on?" And the kid's going, "Oh." She distracted him, and then he stopped his fit. I don't know if the mother later came and said, "Lady, I don't know what you did, but you're great." But I talked to her about it later, and she goes, "Yeah, it just felt like the thing to do. And I had 2-year-olds, and I know what it's like." But yeah, that example of if you react to those emotions as a personality, then it's a totally different way of directing it. And you're aware, I guess, that in that case, that's your ego talking and there's a misconnect, which it's okay, because that's part of you. You're human, so you're capable of those emotions, and we don't want to chase them away anyway. We want to know what they're like so we can experience them to the fullest.
Yeah. So, and it occurred to me today that the ego can't observe itself. So anytime I'm observing the ego, I'm in the watcher.
Oh, that's cool. I never thought of that. Wow.
So, anytime I see the ego, that's actually to be celebrated, because there's a tendency to kind of beat up on yourself, right? Like, we go through all this coaching stuff and we're like, I shouldn't be run by the ego, which if thought itself is of ego.
If you're totally in your ego, then you're totally in that world, and you can't catch yourself being in there.
And a great example of that, because I know you love entertainment references, a great example of that is Sheldon on The Big Bang Theory.
Oh yeah, okay.
That character is completely in his ego, and therefore his behavior never occurs odd to him.
And everybody else knows what he does, and they just delight in setting him off.
Yes.
Yeah. That's a perfect example.
So he is such a brainiac, he's such an intelligent guy that he can't get out of his head, not even for a second, to get to his heart to be the watcher of his own behavior. And so therefore it doesn't occur to him as odd. So anytime with that we observe the ego, that's to be celebrated, not oh man, there I go again. Oh,
Yeah,
we're in
as
the
soon as
water.
we chastise ourselves, we're not allowing ourselves the beauty of being human.
I love alliteration. Yes, it's to be celebrated, not chastised. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then also we know that we don't have to be stuck in that mode. Oh, look, thank you. I think it was Lauren Artress, the lady that does the labyrinths. She said when those feelings come about and your emotion goes up, you stop and you look at it and say, hello, thanks for sharing, and move on. And I love that way of putting it. There it is again. Oops.
Yeah.
So you acknowledge it's there, but then don't dwell on it. Don't hang on to it. It's perfect. Yeah, I had an experience similar, or an opposite type of experience, where it was my adult self that came out that was totally controlling it. And I did write a blog on it, so I'm not going to get too much detail about it, but I wanted to participate in a certain event. And I was looking forward to it, but as the planning came from the event, I felt it more and more restrictive, and I was resisting. And and being something that I really wanted to do at first, I wasn't recognizing it at first. So if it were like some business obligatory, like back in my corporate days, some corporate dinner, and I was feeling that same resistance, I would know right away, okay, that's not my thing, I don't want to go. But this was a wellness fair and I wanted to go. So I thought I should want to go. So when I stopped wanting to go, or stopped my inner self, my inner being started fighting it, my ego stepped in and says, oh, Terry, just suck it up and go. You're supposed to go and follow the rules and all this, until it got so painfully obvious that every time an email from the organizer came in, I'd go, and there was this icky, I could always tell because it's this icky feeling on my shoulders. It kind of reminded me of an email coming from my senior boss back in the old days. So I thought, okay. But it wasn't until it was all over I went back and realized all those signs were there. So, and it's okay. I don't have to participate in this. Even if I think I should participate in it, I don't have to if it doesn't feel right. But I was overthinking it. And it's so unlike me that I think I had to experience that just to know what it was like. Everything got in the way. The traffic slowed down. I got stuck in a traffic jam, and then this happened, and all this things happened, and I said, okay, just turn the freaking car around and go home.
Yep.
And it came, the punchline to the whole thing was, as soon as I was like less than 2 miles away from the event, and I had tension and a headache came on, and I finally said, okay, that's it. As soon as I hit take me home on my GPS, I hadn't even turned the car. I was in the left turn lane getting ready to turn around and go home. And all of a sudden, whoosh, all of it was gone. That was when I realized where I was at. But those twinges of, and I guess the reason why I want to bring this up is sometimes our intuition tells us things that we shouldn't do or that are not good for us. It's not. Right. It's harder for us to recognize than when we're getting this, oh yeah, it's lighting us up. So yeah, it came to the point where I had to feel all of that, and it built up, where it happened so gradually, like coming down with a illness or something that gradually comes up, and 3 days later you're in a full-blown flu, that I recognized it finally. When it went away like that. And that was it. So then I noticed how bad it was when it finally went away immediately. Okay. There was lesson time. Yep, check. There was my learning experience. And I never
Mm-hmm.
know why. I never found out what it was about that event that wasn't good for me or wouldn't have been appropriate for me there. Doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm. And I think that the difference around it is like, so some people might argue with that, and they might look at that and say, well, you know, Terry, were you afraid? Did you have a background story of fear? And so that's where it gets a little bit tricky, is trusting. That's the skill of trusting when your intuition is moving you away from something. And again, it's not just your ego out of fear or whatever. And the opportunity behind that, I think the distinction is to just kind of check with yourself and say, well, what story do I have going on about this?
Yeah.
You know, and your story was, I should do it.
Yeah.
All the other hippies are doing it.
Yeah, it
I
was
should
like
do it.
this was an event, and I liked most of the people who were participating that I knew that I had met before. Oh yeah, this is going to be a great thing, and I should do this. But who knows what it is? I mean, maybe somebody there had a competitive energy that I didn't need to be part of. Who knows? It doesn't matter. And sometimes when we get in these stasis and we're not sure about some event, I turn around a lot of times and I say, what's the worst thing that happens if I miss out on something and I don't know if I feel like going or not?
Mm-hmm.
And I've done this a couple of times with my husband, where one or the other of us is feeling like some event we plan. I mean, not something we bought tickets for or anything, but there's some event that we were going to go to and it didn't work out, or we didn't feel like going, and we thought, okay, we just won't go then. Worst thing that's going to happen is somebody's going to say, oh, where's Terry and Christian?
Right.
Or that we miss out, somebody tells us later, oh, you should have been there, it was so great. Okay, so what?
It was great for them, but it might not have been great for you. If the universe wasn't taking you there, then it wouldn't have been great for you.
Oh, good point. Yeah.
You know,
because if we really, that's a good point, because if it was something that would have been really wonderful for us, we would have felt that.
You would have been there.
We would have been
there. You would have been there. You would have known to be there.
Yeah.
That's what I've come to believe. You really can't screw this up. You can't.
Yeah, right.
Because if it's really, really good for you and you turn your head from it, the universe will like, and then you look this way and the universe will go.
You get this little tap on the shoulder. Hey, bud, over here.
Yeah. You just really can't. You really can't mess it up. So if you can then, knowing that, then you can relax.
Yeah.
And surf the wave. And just have fun. Because fear of missing out is still fear.
That's true.
So, yeah, that's the fun. You can't mess it up. You can't mess it up.
That is too cool. So yeah, and which brings us kind of back to, and I won't get into a whole nother subject, but comparing this to when we were talking about setting our wildly inspiring goals, if we're imagining this, and this came across to me when we had that call a couple days ago, was when we're imagining something that we want, and I don't care if you're picturing what you want to have for dinner tonight or what you want to do 3 years from now, some amazing, awesome trip, but you've got something that's really planning that's amazing, and you're feeling the energy coming up as you're visioning it or thinking about it. If suddenly something else pops up into your mind about it, there's something there that's in here or in your heart that's calling you to it. I'm trying to think of an example. And rather than make one up. But okay, I'm planning a vacation. Say there was a vacation that we were planning, my husband and I are planning on, and we were like a year in advance from this thing. And we're doing all the visioning stuff. We're picturing it. Both of us are imagining it in the way that we want to. Is if it's somewhere we've never been before, we're looking at the travel brochures or websites, whatever, of where it is, and we're seeing this and that and that. Oh, I do have an example. So out of the blue, this was this was several years ago. We were going to go on this trip to Greece, and we had the island all picked out. This is where we're thinking about going. And I'm reading about it in a review. Oh, this is great. This is exactly what we want. And all of a sudden, and I don't remember who came up with it, one of us, as we're talking about it, says, gee, I wonder if they have sea kayaking there. Don't know where that idea came up in our mind, but and I don't even remember who thought of it first, but sea kayaking. Okay, so I was still enjoying the wonders of Google, that you could just type in what you want and there it is. So it must have been over 10 years ago, but I'm typing this in and sea kayaking in Lesbos, and all of a sudden this company comes up. And it was a small, I could tell, like a family-run place. We talked to them. I sent them an email, told them when we're going to be there. And literally before we were to arrive, they already said, well, you want to meet on Friday? Like 2 days after we flew in? Sure. And it turned out to be a couple that we've been friends with off and on since, and we keep in touch with. She's Canadian, he's Greek, and we made wonderful friends. We went on a trip with them. We went to lunch with them afterwards, and all this led to all wonderful discoveries that we've had as we connected with them over the years. But somewhere in the blue, somebody came up with the idea of kayaking. That idea was sent to us.
Oh yeah.
It was like, it's like there's this guide sitting behind you. How about kayaking? Check that. Google kayaking. Right there. Go in there. So yeah, sometimes it comes up in amazingly awesome ways.
Delightful ways.
Delightful ways. We can't even think these things up off.
No, you can't. You can't.
I mean, we can. We've got imaginations, but that's that inner self that comes up with those imaginations.
Yeah, and I think what I'm working on in myself right now is to not limit myself by my own desires or my own imagination.
Yeah.
You know, this or something better. It's
this or something better. Yeah. And you don't have to, because what the universe sends to you is sometimes more than you could have even imagined in yourself.
Oh my gosh, yes. Oh my gosh, yes. Yeah. And just the other fun thing is, you don't have to wait to get there to be there. You know, and that ties right back into what we were talking about on the call, is getting to that feeling place of what there is like, you know.
Yeah.
You don't have to wait to get there to be there.
Yeah, you can have that feeling already there, and there it is.
And the more you're there in that feeling, the faster you'll get there in actuality. So
yeah. With that, I think this is a good drawdown point, and leaving that where it's still exciting so we can look forward to the next call. So I would say it was absolutely a wonderful conversation. And for all of you who in future times will be watching this recording and learning from us, I think you're already, by the way, secret, you're already part of this conversation in some form already. So I look forward to connecting with you later on.
Yay!
Oh, yay. Take care, everybody.
Big fun.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.